Hey everybody, welcome back to Vanta EDC. Today we are going to be doing a special video, I guess you could say. We're going to be doing a review of my knife collection at this point in time. And the reason I'm doing this video now is, well, partially because I haven't uploaded videos in a couple weeks and I feel bad about that. But number two is this month marks a year since I've been seriously collecting pocket knives. I've owned a few knives before the last year, but up until that point, it hadn't really been like a hobby or a kind of an area of interest or any real knowledge. And so, I figured this would be a good time to kind of go over the things that I've had in my collection, I've kept up to this point, and even offers a little bit of advice and kind of insight into collecting knives with as much and as little experience as I've had. So some caveats. This will be a longer video, so if you enjoy that sort of thing, great. If not, feel free to skip through stuff or whatever. I am gonna be going in a particular order of things, so you can just see what's on screen at any given time if you're interested. I also apologize for the audio. I feel like there's going to be some ringing. I can't really avoid that right now in the room that I have to record in. So I do apologize for that. Hopefully I'll be able to figure out a solution for that in the future. So I apologize if that is a annoyance to you. So that said, I'm actually I don't think I've seen other YouTube people do collection videos in a chronological order. And what I mean by that is the order in which I actually got these knives. And so that's what I'm going to do, because I feel like it kind of provides more context to my tastes and my choice in knives, and kind of like the changes in my choices in knives. So we'll just go with the first one, which is what I have in my hand right here. I'm sure some of you are familiar with this knife. This is actually the mini Kalashnikov by Boker. So this is an auto, as you can see, just the push button auto. It's very snappy. And so the first few knives, including this one, these are knives that I got before I started seriously collecting knives. So I got this a few years ago. And at the time, I was just excited to have the opportunity to own and carry auto knives. And so I was looking at the time, the idea of spending more than like $25 on a knife was crazy to me. And so I was able to, I think, get this for like under $40 brand new from Blade HQ, I believe. And so, as you can see, there's it's gone through a lot of wear. The blade is very dull. I've tried sharpening it with like cheap sharpeners. I don't own like a true sharpening system, so I don't have the ability to sharpen this as much as it could be, but it's an Oz-8 steel, so it's not the best steel by any means, but it is very snappy, and it's very nice and compact. And so at the time, I wanted a really compact knife. I wanted an auto. I wanted it to be black and tactical, and so that's what you can see. I got the one with the serrations and the Tanto edge. I thought this was the coolest looking one, and I still think that the utility of a serrated edge is really good, but for better or for worse, the anti-serration snobbery of most of the knife community has me steering away from serrated blades for the moment. So anyway, this is kind of like a throwback for me, just because this is very different in a way from my taste now, but it is a good reminder. So this is the Boker Mini Kalashnikov. And so that is the first knife in my collection. And so basically, I put it in the corner because I'm just going to be working my way and placing each knife on screen as I go. Next one, this is an Opinel, and it is the number 8. And so this is not a knife that I actually got for myself. This was a gift from a mentor of mine, actually. I can't remember if it was like a white elephant Christmas gift or something, or a birthday gift, but it's it's not a knife that I would have ever picked for myself. It's not my style, and it's not very pocketable, but I will always have this in my collection because it's, it was a gift from someone that has been really influential in my life and someone I'm really grateful for. And so, this is a knife I'll always have. And you can see it's like a lot of tape residue and crap that I've never been able to fully clean off, or never tried to really clean off. And so this stays with me. So there's that. The next one, the next one also another old knife from long before I really got into knives. This is when I thought Kershaw was like the best brand I could get. This is the Kershaw, I believe it's called the Cathode. It's like it's like a steel frame liner lock, or a steel frame lock, sorry, with again a Tanto blade. I think I got this just like as an add-on to I got this when I was like ordering like parts and stuff off of like a gun website, and I just saw like it was like a $15 knife. I was like, yeah, might as well. No, not having really any clue at the time like what a good knife was, or even in a way wanting a good knife. I just wanted a knife that looked cool and it was cheap, so I was like, sure. And this is a good lesson, and don't buy something that you haven't got your hands on before unless you really know you want it, because this thing is really garbage. Like the lock doesn't even engage like half the time. Like this is a spring assist. It's not even auto, it's a spring assisted knife, so it has a very inconsistent action. It doesn't like fully, like, see right there, it didn't fully like deploy and lock. I think now, yeah. So not a great knife, but again, indicative of my early pre-knife collecting days. That, I mean, I have no reason to keep it, but I doubt I will. I probably have to give it away in order to truly get rid of it out of my life. So yeah. Okay, so this is the last knife in my pre-knife collecting days. And it is a lot nicer than these other ones in a way. So this is, if you know, this is the Kershaw Launch 11. So this is another out the side auto. Again, at the time, I thought auto knives were really cool. I still think they're cool. I guess they're not as cool to me as I once thought they were, though, relatively speaking. But, you know, this seemed like the perfect knife to me at the time because, again, I really value, and I still do, I value like compact, lightweight, you know, making it easy to carry. And the aesthetics for me were important and are still important now. I mean, I think this is still a cool looking knife in some ways, but it's not like the coolest looking knife to me anymore. At one time I did think it was, but not anymore. So yeah, this is a much nicer knife than all the previous knives in terms of price point and quality and everything. And so I think even though this was before my knife collecting days, this gave me in a way like a benchmark of what to expect from like higher quality knives in terms of, I guess you could say, a fit and finish and, you know, that sort of thing, and the consistency of the action. This is a really great action. So even though it's not a Pro Tech, it's still very snappy. And yeah, you know, I got a very good deal on it actually. So brand new. So I can't complain about that. It'll be hard to get rid of it, honestly, just for that reason alone. All right, next up we have, so this is the first knife that was the start of my serious collecting of knives. And so I've already done, I think it's at least one video, like one review on this knife. So this is a Civivi Altus. It is technically modded, I guess you could say, because these, Civivi doesn't have a factory all black version. This originally had like the Quibertia wood, I don't even know how you pronounce that name, but the Quibertia wood scales. And I replaced them with these dyed G10 liners that I was able to find on eBay that someone was selling at the time. And so, yeah, this was the first knife that I got after watching. I had probably a month before buying this, or month or two before buying this, I really got onto the YouTube knife reviews. I went down that rabbit hole really hard. And so I got really interested in getting a button lock knife. And so this was the knife at the time that seemed like it fit my preferences, again, of being relatively slim and compact, lightweight, but this time instead of being an auto or something, this is a button lock. I like the idea of a button lock because of how fidgety it was, and also that it didn't require me to have my fingers in the blade path to disengage the lock. That's something that to this day I still am very partial towards, is having a button lock or something that keeps my fingers out of the blade path, just for that reason alone. So yeah, this is a great knife. You know, to this day I would recommend this, especially to either people who want a budget knife or people who are starting out in collecting knives. This is a great example. It's like, I think this is still the snappiest button lock action, or like action of all the button lock knives I own, which is a decent amount at this point. So there's that, it has that going for it. The blade's fairly thin and slicey. You know, if they made a premium version with like a better steel, maybe like with tie scales, I'd be all over that, honestly, now that I think about it. I haven't thought about that before, but if we were to ever do like an elevated version of the Civivi Altis, I would definitely go for it. But yeah, I will, yeah, my plan is, I actually have some special plan for this in a way that I will explain a little bit later. So Civivi Altis, great knife. So the next knife I probably bought, you know, fairly soon after getting this Altis. This is, for those of you that don't know, this is the Kaiser Mini Therium. So it's a smaller version of a design that Elijah Isham, you know, I guess licensed or whatever, produced via Kaiser. And so Elijah Isham, who, you know, passed away a year or two ago, you know, I think of all the different knife designers that are known out there, he has one of the most, in my opinion, distinct aesthetic like design languages. And so, you know, I got this knife because getting more and more fascinated with the world of pocket knives, you know, I thought his design language stood out, and I think I actually got this after news of his passing broke. And so, you know, in my mind, I was like, well, I think it'd be, you know, I already kind of been drawn to some of his design language before finding out of his passing. But then, yeah, you know, like this is the first knife that I got with, you know, that's kind of a lot, I guess it was a pretty high price point retail. I got it for a much better deal. I think I got it for just over $100 brand new off Blade HQ because they were having a sale on it at the time. But yeah, I think like retail's like 200 or something like that. And so it has S35 VN blade steel. It's got these, I guess, is it marble carbon fiber? I don't know what type of carbon fiber this would be considered, but it's got titanium clip and backspacer. So a lot of premium features compared to all the knives that I'd had to that point. And so, yeah, it's still a very ergonomic knife. You know, I'm not a huge carbon fiber scales guy. Like I don't have any other knives with carbon fiber scales. I don't plan on accumulating a bunch more. But you know, this is a very slicey knife, and it has even though it looks weird, it does have a kind of oddly ergonomic profile. You can choke up like this, and it has this nice thumb ramp here, and then there's a finger choil-ish thing here where you can choke up on. So yeah, it's a great cutter, a great slicer. It's the only downside, the main downside I should say, to me is that it's really tall of a profile. You can see here, like very tall compared to like the Civivi Altis, for example. And so, yeah, it's not that compact in pocket, which is for me a bigger deal. Some people it doesn't matter, but for me, not the biggest. So I don't really carry this anymore. It stays in its case, but you know, it's a good knife nonetheless. So yeah, next knife. This I also have done a review on. This is the Demco Knives 80 20.5. And this has Grivory scales and a CPM 3V blade, as you can see right there, 3V. And so, you know, this is in a way, in my mind, at least at the time when I got this, and I was thinking a lot about getting this, this is kind of like button lock adjacent in the sense that this is another lock that completely allows you to completely move your fingers out of the path of the blade as it closes when you disengage the lock. And so that was really enticing to me at the time. And I think another thing that the shark lock, so this is called the shark lock for those of you who don't know, the shark lock, another thing that has going for it is just the added strength that a traditional button lock does not have. So this is a knife that I have in a way mixed feelings on, in as much as I was hoping for a knife that was just as fidgety as the Civivi Altis, and it isn't, in my opinion personally, mainly because I just didn't realize that, because this basically the shark lock is under constant spring tension. And so what that means is when you are deploying it, like for me it's very easy to fail this deployment because there's a lot more spring tension here. So anyway, it's just not as fidgety as the Altis here, which is there's no real significant spring tension kind of working against the knife once you break the detent of the plunger. And so, you know, I think I just, in a way, had the wrong expectations for this knife. I was hoping it would be just as fidgety, if not more, than the Altus the Altus was to me, and it just wasn't. But in kind of trying to be taking a step back and being more just like trying to see it more objectively, you know, this is a great knife for a lot of reasons because of the strength of the lock to the overall size and weight of the knife that you get. And I like how slim of a profile it is, because I've mentioned it for a lot of these other knives that, yeah, like a high priority for me with pocket knives is knives that are easy to, you know, slip in and out of pocket. Basically, they're really comfortable, they're not obtrusive, they don't take up a lot of space, and you don't, they're not bulky in your pocket. So this is great for that. So this is a knife that actually is in my pouch, my EDC pouch all the time, because with it having 3V steel and having this fairly thick blade stock, very strong lock, I trust this to be useful in much harder use tasks, which are few and far between for me. But all the same, just having a knife that I'm fully comfortable in is nice. And so this is that for me. I think the only modification I might make at this point is maybe getting phosphor bronze washers instead of, and removing the factory bearings that are in here, just to remove the, you know, to kind of make this a quote unquote true hard use knife, where in my mind, having bearings instead of, washers instead of bearings makes it even more hard use than a knife with bearings. So yeah, so Demco 80 20.5, yeah, there's that. And then the Wee Hyphen, which is even more of a favorite than I expected it would be, if I can say that. And so, and I've done a review on this knife. I think, yeah, just a review, not a initial impressions, but like a 1 month review or whatever. So this is a great knife for a lot of reasons. And long story short, if you don't want to, or if you haven't seen my review of this, you know, I really love the design language, the aesthetic, the lines of this knife. This is a Gavco knives design. Michael Gavick, for those of you who don't know, he's the designer under the label Gavco Knives. And so, you know, this is actually my first titanium frame lock, my first knife in titanium, period, right? Yeah, first knife in titanium. I really like the blade shape. I love that it's I guess you could call it reverse Tanto-ish / almost Warncliffe sheepsfoot blade. And I really love this harpoon thumb ramp. It's got really good ergonomics for despite looking very, in a way, odd, I guess you could say, very unconventional for a pocket knife. So yeah, and it's got this hollow grind. It's fairly thin blade stock, so it's very slicey. I've used this to cut multiple like steaks and like pork chops and whatever when I've been out and about, because I know that it's gonna cut a lot better than like the crappy butter knives and dull steak knives that these restaurants have. So yeah, this is a great knife. Very few complaints. I'm planning on probably getting it modded just by simply getting some sort of what do you call it, scale milling for more texture, because there's not good friction on the scales as they are. But other than that, this is a really great knife, really solid action. I did already personally modify it to I dremeled in a detent ball ramp onto the tang of the blade so that it was more smooth on the close especially. So it's a very, very fun, very snappy. The detent in my mind is perfect. I say that now being honestly fairly inexperienced with titanium frame locks, because I don't have any others and I've only handled a few. So but yeah, in my limited experience with titanium frame locks, this has a great detent. It's very snappy on the reverse flick and the thumb flick. So this is definitely one of my favorites in my collection at this point. All right, so that is the first row of knives. We are halfway through, if that helps. So the next knife is kind of a departure from the previous two in a way. So this is, because these are much nicer, more expensive knives. This is, you know, arguably the best budget knife of, I can't remember if it came out in 2022, or came out this year, 2023. But yeah, the CJRB Pyrite. This checks so many boxes for me when it comes to the ideal EDC knife. The only thing I think going against it is that it's in a kind of a budget blade steel, and it's only got technically, I guess, one and a half deployment methods, with the just having thumb studs, no flipper, no other deployment methods. But in all other respects, this is like the ideal EDC knife to me. The action is super great. Of course, you can see this is a button lock. It's a super thin blade, so it's very slicey. It's got this, I think it's almost virtually like a full flat grind. It's not technically a full flat grind. You can see this this flat right here. But yeah, it's a super thin handle width, and very lightweight for what it is. It's got these G10 scales and these skeletonized steel liners. The steel liners are very heavily skeletonized, which helps it save this weight. So yeah, for what this is, that you get a lot of quality and value for, I think it's $50. You can get it for at most places for $50. So this is one of the best. Like, if I probably would recommend this over any other knife to a brand new person or someone who's looking for a good budget knife, because there's just so much good about it. You know, it's so good that I got my wife like the Knife Center exclusive version with the pack of wood as her first knife, because yeah, it's just so good. I know that almost every beginner can appreciate it. Very easy to deploy, very easy and safe to close. So yeah, very, very great slicer. So great for EDC tasks. All right, so then next, this is a special one, and this is actually the subject of the first real video on my channel, aside from the channel intro video. This is the Urban EDC Supply exclusive tactile Knifeco Rockwall. So the reason this is special to me is because as I first got into knives and was getting aware of all the different brands and things out there, and trying to get a sense of what appealed to me and all that sort of thing, things that seemed like they would be that would fit my preferences and whatnot, the tactile Knifeco Rockwall, the design overall, stood out for several reasons. One, because it's made in Texas, and I was born in Texas. Two, because you know, it's very slim, lightweight, slicey, all those things. Had great reviews at that point in time already. And three, because it comes in magnet cut, which is, you know, it's not as new as it was when this model first came out, but it's still, you know, the new super steel in the knife world. And so for me, there were so many reasons why the tactile Rockwall was like, in a way, it became a Grail knife for me before I ever got it. And so I knew I wanted a Rockwall, but I didn't want just a normal Rockwall. I had seen that, you know, Tactile was doing exclusive with different retailers, dealers, what have you. And so I was just waiting for an exclusive where the milling pattern on the scales really appealed to me. And I can't remember how I found out about this one, but I did. And as soon as I found out about it, I was like, I have to have, this is the one that I've been waiting for. I've literally been waiting months. I think I got this in January, and like January of 2023. And I had been wanting a Rockwall since like May, or like, I guess not May, like June, July of 2022. So like 6 months of waiting for like the right version. And as soon as I discovered that this existed, I was like, yep, this is the one, because this pattern to me is really is much more appealing than a lot of the other patterns that they had released exclusives in. So yeah, this is the Urban EDC Supply exclusive. It's called it's the Workerman Sagaiha pattern. It's not just the standard Sagaiha pattern, which is the Waves pattern that you know, Urban EDC has done a lot of different knives with that pattern. I think I do want a knife with just the standard pattern as well. In all honesty, if they did this in the standard Sagaiha, I would prefer that over this one, but I still really like this one. So yeah, this is like my luxury, you know, for me, high-end gentleman's EDC. I don't carry this very often, one, because it's so rare and so expensive, so I don't want to risk damaging or losing it. And two, because, well, I guess, yeah, those are the reasons. Yeah, I just, I want to save it for special occasions, so I only carry it, you know, on like date nights and stuff like that. So yeah, this was my first Grail, and the first Grail that I ever owned. So this is a very special knife to me. Next up, ProTech Malibu. Many of you are probably familiar with the Malibu as a general model. This one in particular, as you can see, it's the all black textured aluminum scales. in 20 CV. It's a reverse Tanto blade. And so, you know, let's see, up until this point, I had owned two true button locks, the Altus and the Pyrite. And I knew that at this point, I really liked button locks. I had been able to, you know, test the fundamental proof of concept for myself with two knives up to that point. But, you know, I knew that these two were budget button locks, and that ProTech is like the name when it comes to higher end production button locks. And so I was able to get my hands on this, and I actually, it was sitting in a safe for a long time, basically untouched, because I was in a way afraid to finally carry it, to finally cut with it. But I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I just have to see for myself via experience and not just by physically owning it. So yeah, I carried this for a long time, and it really is, in a way, of everything that people say it is. But at the same time, I don't think it's the perfect knife, and I don't think it's even the perfect button lock. It has a lot of good things going for it, but in terms of my personal preferences, there are things I would change, things I would do differently or mod if I could. And so, yeah, this is, I mean, at the end of the day, it is a very fidgety knife. It's very satisfying to flick open and to shut. But, you know, things like the relative thickness of the blade stock, the lack of real contouring on the handles, the aesthetic of this texturing in particular, and the lack of more than one real deployment method beyond the flipper, even though the flipping deployment method is good. Like the action on it is perfect, I would say. Like the detent strength is perfect. Those are all great things, but there's these other features that just, you know, kind of are not what I prefer or what I would ideally have in a EDC button lock. So it's a knife that I like having as a reference, and I do carry now occasionally here and there, but it's not my favorite EDC button lock. Now, the next knife is another ProTech. Actually, and the next one after that's going to be a ProTech, just a heads up. So this is the ProTech Mordax, and this is, I flashed it just a second ago. This is the Blade Show Texas exclusive, or Blade Show Texas 2023 exclusive, I should say, in Magna Cut. It's got the really awesome honeycomb milling pattern on these aluminum scales, and it's got this mosaic pin button. And so this was a knife that I had no expectations for in a way, and I'm really glad I didn't, because I've been very pleasantly surprised at how much this is, in a way, defied on paper my preferences, and been a knife that I really enjoy and really want to carry as much as possible in some respects. And so, yeah, you know, it's a lot bigger than I would normally, that on paper I would prefer a knife to be, but the ergonomics are so good. The blade is so slicey for how big it is. I really do like this milling pattern much more than just the generic texturing that ProTech does on a lot of their other, on like I think they did on this, the Runt, some other models. But anyway, I think this honeycomb milling, they haven't really done on many other models. And so this, yeah, there's just so many things about, and the fact that I was able to get this at Blade Show, which was my first show that I ever went to. And, you know, this is just, a lot of things about this are really great. And so this is one of my favorite knives in my collection, which, by the way, I will kind of go through, amongst other things, my favorite knives in my collection once I go through all of them. So if you're interested in finding out about that, yeah, you can wait and see for that. So yeah, ProTech Mordax. This is, in all honesty, I prefer this over the Malibu, and I'm hoping to get kind of a more higher production run user Mordax, because I am a little wary of using this heavily just because it is so limited and valuable. All right, next is another, as I said, another ProTech, and this is another Blade Show Texas 2023 exclusive. This one is number 18 out of 100, or sorry, not 18. This one's 18. This one's 62 out of 100. And I actually didn't get this at Blade Show because I passed on it initially and got a few other knives that I ended up selling eventually. And so this was a knife that I regretted not getting at the time, and I was actually lucky enough to be able to get this for table price via PVK, if you guys know that website. They're a big ProTech dealer, and so I was able to snag one of these for table price. Lucky me. So this is the ProTech PT Plus. So for those of you that aren't aware of the kind of the SNG lineage of knives, originally a mixed Strider knives design. The PT was the smallest version, kind of like the micro version. The SNG is the standard size. The SMF is the extra, like the big boy size. And so the PT Plus is the most recent sort of halfway between PT and SNG size. And so for me, it's the perfect size, hand-wise. Strider ergos are very distinct and for a lot of people very preferable. Not for everybody, but for a lot of people, it's got kind of this built-in choil between the bottom of the blade and the top of the scales here, and then it's got this generous choil here, and then the ramp on the back of the handle here. And so I think for me, the things I like most about this particular, well, I should say the model, is the overall size and the ergonomics of it. And then with this version, I really like the abalone button, man. It's unfortunate because I feel like this lighting is not going to, you can't really capture the brilliance of this. You can kind of, in a way it's like blasting out the camera, but the abalone button is really great. And this one comes in MagnaCut in like the 63 plus HRC. So, this would be a great user. I'm kind of on the fence of if I'm going to hold on to this long term. I'm thinking I'm going to sell it just because, I actually, ironically enough, like I started being really, like with knives, being really into autos. I really don't feel the need to carry autos with me, like on my person, or just have autos anymore, even though this is a very snappy and satisfying knife to deploy. So yeah, I may get rid of this. If you're interested, feel free to let me know. Be willing to part with it for a fair price. So yeah, it's a great knife. Nothing wrong with it. It's just more like it's not in a high priority for me to own an auto at the end of the day. So yeah. All right, we're down to the last three. Let me grab a drink of water real quick. And actually, a quick caveat before we move on to the last three. This next knife kind of falls outside of my true collection. For those of you that have seen my review or initial impressions of this is the Vosti Labrador, and I was actually given this by Vosti directly to review and post review of it. So I did. Long story short, it is a great knife. It is a little too large for me personally, but it is very satisfying. It's got all the deployment methods. It's got a standard flipper. It's got the front flipper, and then it's got thumb stud, so you can do a thumb flick and a reverse flick. And the great thing about this, it's got that just like guillotine action. It goes on its own. Gravity will take it. So it's not like purely for the size, honestly, it's not my cup of tea, but everything else about it is great. So this will be if I ever hit 1,000 subscribers, I will give this knife away for sure, along with maybe some other stuff. So yeah, I don't consider this part of my collection just because it is going to be given away to one of you subscribers. So if you're not subscribed and want a free good knife, you have a very good chance of, if you subscribe, to win that. All right, so last three knives in my collection. The next one that I got was the Quiet Carry Drift. For those of you that might be interested, actually Quiet Carry just recently released, or is in the process of releasing, a larger version of this, but this is the original size and model. The version I have here is in black G10, and so this is a liner lock instead of being a titanium frame lock. And so I wouldn't call it a grail knife per se. Ooh, yeah, see, I'll get into that in a second. I wouldn't call this a grail knife per se, but this is a knife that I was very much looking forward to owning because it comes in Vanax, which I don't know if more educated and knife steel experts would agree with this, but I kind of view Vanax as kind of like the closest analog to MagnaCut. And so just because of the high corrosion resistance and high edge retention and toughness, as far as my understanding goes, I could be totally wrong on that, but that's my understanding based off what I've heard a lot of other people say and whatnot. So yeah, this is a knife that I was looking forward to for a lot of reasons. One, because of the steel. Another, because of how slicey it is. Three, because of the ergonomics, just having these two finger choils. And yeah, just overall how thick the knife is as a whole, and the fact that it comes in black G10 with a liner. To me, I generally prefer the conceptually, I prefer the idea of a liner instead of a frame lock, just because there's less chance of you, inducing too much lock bar tension when trying to either close or deploy or close the blade. And so, like this is a great slicer. So actually, you can probably, I don't know if the light's gonna if the camera will catch this in the light, but not great. Yeah, but there's definitely residue on this blade, and I'm 99% certain this is clementine residue. I have this kind of a small aside. I have this weird thing where I don't like peeling like orange type fruits with my bare fingers, because I don't like getting the juice and the grit of the peel under my fingernails. So I use a knife, which I know is like really weird and lame, but anyway, so this is the knife I've been using because it's in Van-X, because obviously like citrus is highly acidic, and so I'm not really worried about the blade steel corroding. Now this will be interesting. I actually want to try this right now. Let's get a tissue over here. And I'm gonna try just wiping this off with a wet tissue and seeing if there's any corrosion, because that's probably been there for a week at least, if not longer. This tangerine residue, clementine residue, whatever you call it. So let's see. I'm sorry that it's not more evident on the camera. Okay, sorry. I'm just trying not to drip water onto my other knives here. Okay, so let's see, did I get the physical residue? Okay, so the physical the tangible residue is gone. And let's see. Yep, I don't see any. Maybe there might be a tiny amount. Like I can see what looks like almost like a belt satin sort of effect here, but I don't know if that's corrosion or something else. But yeah, I mean, there's no like, brown rust or anything like that on this blade, despite having dried citrus juices and pulp on the blade steel. So that was an unexpected sort of proof of concept for you right there. But anyway, this is a great slicer. This is kind of my go-to hard user. I use quotes there because for me, hard use is very different than other people. For me, in all reality, hard use more so has to do with things like corrosion resistance than it does with like physical like toughness and blade steel strength, although that is important as well. So the fact that it's on washers and it's a liner lock versus being a button lock and it's in Van-X, makes me kind of consider this a quote unquote hard user for my hard uses. Because again, I'm not the type of guy who's on a job site doing truly hard work, but things like opening clementines is not a hard use case, but it is a corrosive use case. So, all right. So the next two are the same model, but the first is kind of one of the general releases, and the next you'll see is an exclusive. So, and actually I think my last video was on these two, so it's not that much of a surprise if you watch that video, but this is the CJRB Echo. So the Echo was originally a custom designed by Ray Laconico. You can see his name right there, Ray Laconico. And so I think the original design it's just a titanium frame lock originally. It's not a button lock, but me wanting a button lock as my ideal EDC knife, this really drew my eye. Notice the trend. These are all like fairly premium production knives. These are all above like $250 and up, basically, in terms of like retail cost. So even though like I definitely have grown in my been leaning more towards high-end production knives, high end for me. Let's just put that in context. High end for me, production knives. The CJRB Echo still drew my attention because for me, the only things missing for, say, like the CJRB Pyrite was the lack of more deployment methods, really. And I wouldn't say that this was a thing missing in the Pyrite per se, and they've even they created alternate models so that it definitely isn't missing now. But like, I like having this sheep's foot blade shape over just a standard like drop point or clip point, whatnot, just because of the added utilitarian benefit of this lower tip. on the blade. And this blade is super thin and slicey, just like the pyrite is, arguably even more so. And yeah, you get this multiple deployments because you have the opening hole, and then you have the front flipper, which you can use your thumb for. You can use the side of your index finger. You can flip over the top like that. So, and it's a fairly thin. It's a fairly thin handle. It is a little tall in the pocket, but it's not a Kaiser Mini Therium tall, as you can see. Like, there's definitely a difference there. And so, yeah, the only downsides for this knife are the weight, because for whatever reason, and I'm assuming it's just budget reasons, they didn't skeletonize the steel liners on the Echo, even though they do it on the pyrite. And I don't personally love the carbon fiber look. The reason I got it was because at the time this was the only one in black that had a black portion of the knife that wasn't a steel handle, because then the full steel handles were way heavy. I was like, I would not carry that if I got that. So I got this. Now, if I had known at the time that I got this, that this version would be coming out, I would not have gotten this one. Not to say that this is bad, it's just not the perfect rendition for me, but this is almost perfect to me. And this has been far and away my go-to EDC and just favorite knife as of late. So this is the Knife Center exclusive version of the CJRB Echo, and the main differences being that instead of, it still has steel liners that are unfortunately still not skeletonized, but it has titanium bolster and the black micarta scale here. And then instead of having the like stone wash or whatever bead blast, I don't know if it's bead blast, but I think it's like a rough stone wash finish of this blade. It has this really nice, what looks like hand satin, honestly. It might be belt satin, but it's a very fine belt satin. And so this is a great knife. It's a very handsome knife in my opinion. And this is, to me, arguably, like for me personally, this is like the perfect budget gentleman's folder. And so I've been carrying this a lot lately, and I have very few complaints about it, and I haven't used I still haven't used RPM 9 super extensively, but I have used a decent amount because I have the pyrite. I've had the pyrite for 6 months at this point practically, and then the Echo for like a couple months. And so, I haven't used it in any like super corrosive and like wet environments intentionally, so just because I definitely on this blade I don't want to cause any unnecessary corrosion on this beautiful satin finish. But yeah, the edge retention is pretty solid so far, and this is just a great slicer and super fun fidgety button lock. So that is the latest knife in my collection as of I should say physically in my possession. I placed a pre-order for what is almost undeniably the most hyped up and just the most kind of innovative knife design in the last year or a few years. And so you might have a good guess of what that is, but I won't spoil the surprise until I get it in a few months. But that is not physically in my possession yet. So this is the latest knife in my possession. So in short, these, I think it's 16 knives. These are the knives in my collection at this point in time. A year of collecting knives. These technically are from before that. So let's say, 12 knives that I didn't realize that. And 12 knives in 12 months. How fitting. So now that I've gone through each one of those, I think I kind of explained in a way why I got each of these knives to some degree or another. You'll notice some of the trends, just to point out in case it wasn't already obvious. One of my favorite brands, I guess you could say, is ProTech. In terms of knives that I own and that I have owned, I definitely appreciate the fact that they're a very high quality, relatively high volume American production company. They're not like Spyderco and Benchmade, but Spyderco and Benchmade don't appeal to me in the same way that ProTech does. And so, big ProTech fan. As you can see, a big CJRB fan. I have 3 CJRB designs. My wife has one of her own. I'm certain, I think they're doing premium versions of the Pirate. I hope they do like a premium blade steel version of the Echo, because I would probably jump on that most likely. And then We Civivi, I mean, I only have two here, the Altus and the Hyphen, but those are both very good for what you pay and for what I was hoping to get out of them. So yeah, those are some of my favorite brands, and as if it wasn't already blatantly obvious at this point, kind of my preferred style of knife is a button lock. Let's see, on the table is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 button locks on the table, so that should tell you something. 6 out of what was it, 16? Yeah, so that's a good amount. So now, video's already been long. What I'm going to quickly do is go over my top 5 most sentimentally important knives, and then my overall top 5 favorites in my collection. Just because I'm sure some of you are interested in finding that out. So I'll start from number 5 of most sentimentally important to number 1. So number 5 is this mini Kalashnikov, and because of the reasons that I mentioned, that this is, it's my kind of the first, like, kind of, I guess, recognizable knife, you could say, that I ever owned, and it is a time capsule for me in a way, because my taste, like, the difference between this and this is huge. Maybe not in price point, but definitely in, just many aspects of it. And so, the evolution of my tastes is evident in that. So I'm always going to have a weirdly soft spot in my heart for the mini Kalashnikov. Number 4, most sentimentally important, is the Rockwall, because this is the first true Grail knife that I ever had, and I own it. And so, I feel very, very blessed to own this knife. I think it's beautiful. I'm sure it's a decent performer, even though I don't use it much because it's a special knife. So yeah, I have considered getting a user Rockwall, because I do actually want to use a Rockwall heavily. I think it could be a good EDC for me, despite not being a button lock. So yeah, number 3 is, it might not be a surprise to some people, but number 3 is this ProTech Mordax. This one in particular, like this being like the show exclusive, it was the first knife show I ever went to. I'm glad I did, and this is by far the best knife I guess I purchased 3 total when I was at the show, and this is by far my favorite of those 3. And so yeah, I like the Mordax so much, unexpectedly so, that I want to get a second one that I can mod for myself to kind of optimize it to my preferences. So yeah, this Mordax is number 3 most sentimental in my collection. Number 2 is this Opinel, and of all the knives here, it's the one that gets used the least by far, but that doesn't matter, because this was a gift from someone that's really important to me, and it's made a huge impact on my life, someone that I'm very grateful for. And I actually went with him to the Blade Show Texas, and so we've made more memories, knife related memories, since he gave me this many years ago. So yeah, this will always stay in my collection. Then finally, the most I would say the most sentimental knife to me is the Altus, and that's because, as I mentioned, this is the knife that kind of started it all for me in terms of really seriously collecting. It's to this day a very, very high quality budget knife that I can in good conscience recommend to people that are looking for recommendations. And ultimately, I like this knife so much, but it doesn't get carried as much as I think it deserves in a way. So I'm actually planning on giving this to my brother, who will be graduating soon, as a small graduation gift. So this is sentimental to me for several reasons. I know it sounds stupid to describe like an inanimate object as having sentimental value, particularly like a knife, but for me, as much as a knife can be sentimental, not that it can be the most sentimental thing in the world, but as much as a knife can be sentimental, this is the most. So yeah. All right, so now probably the thing most people are interested at this point in is my overall top 5 like favorites. This isn't saying that it's not saying the 5 most expensive or the 5 best made or the 5 whatever highest performing, quote unquote. Those are all relatively, some of those things are subjective, but my overall top 5 favorite, it's a combination of all these things. It's quality, it's the aesthetics, the utility, the exclusivity too. I can't lie, I do like exclusivity when it comes to collecting things. And then the sentimentality, as I've already talked about a little bit. So don't want to drag this video out too long, so we'll get through this. So yeah, and I should have said this earlier, but for both this list of my overall top 5 favorite in my collection and my top 5 most sentimental, that's all going to change with time, I'm sure. I'm sure most of you know that, kind of subconsciously, but I just feel like it's worth saying, because some people like treat like whatever you put on the internet as like they're eternally and never changes, but I'm a human, so I change. Anyway, all right. Top 5 favorite, starting with number 5. That is a tie between the Altus and the Drift. Now, in terms of what is more relevant to me in terms of everyday carry now, this would win out because I don't carry the Altus anymore. But yeah, both of these very high quality, very great EDC knives. I think very well made and functional in their own respects. Now, number 4 is the Hyphen, which kind of, it in a way surprises me, just because it's not like a button lock. It's not kind of a knife that I bought with the biggest expectations. But in a way, I think because of that, because it's like so far exceeded the few expectations that I had for it, it's and I think just innately being a good knife, and a great design, and well made, and well performing. Yeah, this is a knife that I would consider in my top 5 favorite in my collection. Now, number 3 is the ProTech Mordax. I think beyond the sentimental aspects of it, I think it looks good. The ergonomics are amazing. The functionality of things like the thinness of the blade, and the fact that it's in magnet cut, and this milling, and the chamfering, all these things make it a really just overall high quality knife that I really enjoy. This action it's really satisfying to deploy and to close. I think I showed on my review of this, but it's like it will close on its own if you only disengage the lock and don't like close the blade all the way from the jump. So yeah, it's a very satisfying knife overall. One of my favorites. Number 2 is this Rockwall. And I don't have to belabor all the points that I've said to this point, but on top of things I've said things I haven't said. It's a very snappy action. It's a very thin, slicey blade. It makes this very satisfying noise when you deploy. It's like even though it's a very skinny and delicate looking knife, it has this fairly authoritative like thunk to it, like a snap. And so yeah, love that knife. All right. Overall, at this point in time, my favorite knife in my collection is this Echo. And you can argue that there's a recency bias to it. I wouldn't say that I'm free of recency bias, but all the same, I think there's just so much going well for this knife. The only things like I'm very wary to say perfect, but a nearly perfect EDC knife for me would be the Echo with like magnet cut, like this version of the Echo with magnet cut and skeletonized liners. And really that would basically, and I guess you could make it a hollow grind and I'd like it a little more, but that wouldn't even be that necessary because this is such a slicey blade. So yeah, that's how much I like this knife at this point. I think I got this, it was like in beginning of May. So it's like been a month and a half of owning this knife. And I still want to carry this more than I want to carry any of these other knives, and it's honestly not that close. Like I think like I've carried this by far the most, and the next ones that I've carried are, I guess, honestly, like the Drift and the Mordax-ish, but like these compared to how much I carry this is like not even close. So yeah, this is my top favorite right now. Again, that probably will change at some point. I'm fine with that, but right now, like there's so much good about, like that's how much I like this knife and how good I think it is. So if that tells you anything. All right, now I want to share a few tips on building on knife collecting. Primarily to people that have limited resources, which some of you might think, oh, he must make a lot of money because he has this many knives. Or some of you might think, man, this guy's poor because he doesn't have a zillion knives already, blah, 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 whatever. You can come from either end of the spectrum. most of us have limited resources to spend on a hobby like knife collecting. And so I think there's a lot of things that are good to know, especially if you're early on in the journey of collecting knives, that could help you, save money and make sure that you get knives that really are worth it in a way, I guess you could say. So, I say this, and I'm not claiming to be like the foremost expert on the subject of knife collecting by any means. In fact, I'm still very new to it. But I do feel like there is, as someone that has been a collector of other things in the past, this is something that I feel like would be good to share with other people, just, for at least to, kind of something to chew on, if not something to shape their own sort of involvement in the hobby of knife collecting. So yeah, the first thing I would say is, don't fall prey to comparison. Don't fall prey to comparison of, especially because, like, if you're watching this, you probably watch a lot of other people on YouTube as well, I would assume. If not, then great. But, if you do, I'm not surprised. And I think it's really easy to think, man, these other people that are sharing their knives and their knife collections, like, they have so many great knives, like, I need to catch up, or, like, I'm missing out on these brands or these models or whatever it is. And while I'm very much can think that way at many times, but I think there's a danger to that, because it can really lead to impulsive spending and just buying things that you don't actually, at the end of the day, really want or need. So, and I think, one thing that's impossible to know is what everyone else's budget is when it comes to buying knives, what everyone else's income is, all their other financial priorities in their life, all their financial responsibilities and obligations. And so, knife collecting is not, it is a significant financial endeavor if you do it. And so that can't be disregarded at the end of the day. And yeah, like, even beyond the money side of things, it's like this sounds so cliche, but everyone is different. Everyone has their own different preferences and brands that they like and styles and whatnot. It's very clear what my preferences are. I like button locks. I like black knives. I like very, compact EDC friendly knives. That's my bread and butter, but that's not everyone else. So, it doesn't make sense to like collect the way other people collect unless you happen to share the same tastes and the same budget. All right. Another piece, I'd say plan ahead. So, we've already talked about budget a decent amount, but not only that, but know your priorities, know the things that matter to you, when it comes to, what lock style, what brand, what, blade steel, this, that, or the other. And also knowing, like, are you a quantity over quality or quality over quantity person? I'm generally a quality over quantity person. I mean, some of you might disagree, given some of you might think this is an excessive number of knives to own, which is totally fair. I wouldn't even disagree with you, but like, depending on if you just want to try everything out there, or if you just know you like one or two or a few certain things and you just want to get those things, great, do that. And I, again, kind of related to the first thing I said, don't live. And when you plan ahead, that also means you hopefully are less prone to FOMO. Because I think FOMO in the knife world can be very much a double-edged sword, no pun intended, because, you can end up buying something impulsively because it's a sudden drop, or, something that you think you really like, but then it's like, was that actually something you needed to get? So, another thing, kind of in a different direction, but still, I think a piece of advice that I'm only starting to kind of see the value in is, instead of trying to just like buy new knives because they seem a little bit closer to maybe your quote unquote ideal knife, is you can also mod them. Like, the hyphen is, even though it's not a button lock, really great for me in a lot of other ways, but there's a big downside, is the lack of texturing on the scale. So I'm planning on sending it away to get modded, to get scale texturing, and I think that will make it even better of a knife for me. The things I mentioned with this Echo, I don't think I can. I guess I could potentially get the liner skeletonized, but the blade steel I can't really do anything about, at least at this point in time. But yeah, I mean, there's knives that you can mod rather than just buying new knives because you think they'll be slightly better than the previous ones that you already have. Now, last piece of advice, which I think most grown adults would already know in the back of their mind, but might not remind themselves of this when it matters, is that, you know, getting that one knife or those few knives or whatever it is, or getting to handle this after the other, it's not gonna stop you wanting more, probably. Most likely. Some people it will, but most people it won't. As someone, I can personally attest to it. It's like, it's very easy to say like, you know, for example, like getting your Grail. It's like, oh, if I get my Grail, I can be happy. Now, I'm smart enough, and not smart enough, I am experienced enough, again, having collected other things in the past, to know that, oh, just because you get that one thing that you think like is like the pinnacle for you, that doesn't mean your desire is going to end right then and there to get more. And so I think, you know yourself in a way, and in a way, just really know the human condition, or whatever you want to call it, is just like, things at the end of the day don't eternally satisfy. They don't satisfy us forever. And so, yeah, that's something that, you know, I'm not going to get into too much right now, but at the end of the day, these are just things, and these things are not meant to make us happy forever. You know, obviously, like, these make me happy to some degree, but they're not like, these don't define me. These aren't the things that I want to, like, I guess, have till my dying breath, you know, or whatever it is. So I don't know. I don't want to get too philosophical there, but yeah, you know, don't treat things as like this thing that will, you know, solve all your problems and make you happy and, you know, whatnot. And again, I don't think most people think that consciously, but it is something that's easy to kind of forget and kind of like let slip into the background of our decisions and whatnot. So yeah. Yeah, so with all that said, this is a long video. I appreciate you watching whatever amount that you watched. I totally understand if you skipped over most of it or some of it or whatever. But yeah, I mean, feel free to ask any questions you have about the knives that I've shown in my collection. I'm not planning on doing reviews on all of these. Obviously, I've done reviews on a lot of them, but not all of them. And that's for a reason. But if you're really interested in my take on the knives that especially the ones I haven't reviewed yet, feel free to let me know. But yeah, thanks for taking the time. Take care.